Welcome to episode 6 of the Lead Gen Hustler Show. We're thrilled to have Ben Hayward, the visionary behind Envio Studio. Just a few months ago, what could have been a pivotal moment in Ben's career turned into a thriving lead generation business, and he's now generating 16K and beyond a month in revenue through his lead gen agency, Envio Studio. So Ben today has helped numerous companies amplify their lead gen efforts, achieving remarkable success in such a short period of time. And today we're going to be diving into Ben's journey to understand how he went from transitioning from his organization through into launching Envio Studio and scaling all the way through. Ben, it is a pleasure to have you on the podcast today. Thank you for joining me on the show. And welcome.
Thank you very much for having me. First podcast ever, so looking forward to doing this. So yeah, let's get going.
Yeah, no, it's awesome to have you. And first one, so we will be kind and gentle. To kick off, I'd love to understand if you could just tell us what you do, who you are, and give us a little bit of background into Envio Studio.
Sure. So live in the United Kingdom. So Envio Studio, we're just a very sort of typical, I'd say like higher tier lead generation agency. So using AI to create outbound flows, personalized outbound flows for our clients, typically working with software companies. I try and target, let me close off WhatsApp, sorry. Typically try and target SaaS companies, but whenever I'm doing my filtering, I just target software companies as a whole. So a few of our clients are like staff augmentation, but for the most part, it's SaaS.
Awesome. And where are you based? Yeah, where are you working?
So United Kingdom, down in Bournemouth. Should be a nice sunny town, but yeah, not very nice here at the moment, but summer's coming. So looking forward to that.
Nice. That's good. Yeah, summer is definitely coming. And it's interesting that you're working in like the B2B kind of like tech space. It's actually the similar background to me. So yeah, to kick off, I want to just dive into your journey. Is it super interesting to share with our audience just how you got into your career? And from what I understand, you actually started off as a software engineer, which is super interesting. So talk me through how you went from software engineer to lead gen expert and yeah, where you're at today.
Sure. So yeah, before that, let's take it all the way back.
Yeah,
so
let's go back.
So I'm 29 now. When I was around 15, 16, I was running quite a successful gaming YouTube team, right? And I was doing this. I've got a twin brother. We've always done sort of everything together. So we got to like probably amassed around 50 to 60,000 subscribers on one channel. That was going really well. And that was very much like the inception of where YouTube was becoming monetized and you could start making money from it. And I really thought there's a really good opportunity here for us to start potentially making money with this. Got to a stage where it's like, okay, look, this doesn't look like it's going to get to that stage. We need to kind of cut ties and just kind of move on and try something new. But ultimately, that was always my goal. I knew I wanted to do something entrepreneurial where I was making my own income. But from there, I was like, okay, great, let's just start working. So just started doing a typical sort of like retail office jobs. And then every single job I did, I got to a point where I was very motivated. I was doing really well. And then I just hit a brick wall where I was like, this isn't it. I can do more than this, right? So then then I went into floor laying, so manual labor. I thought, okay, great. Got to the stage in his company where he said like, look, I want you to come on as kind of like have an apprentice. You can train someone up. You kind of be like the top guy. And he's actually going to hire my twin brother. So he's going to come on board there. I was going to train him up. We'd build like a flooring empire. But I just kind of had this deep down feeling that this wasn't what I wanted to do. And I had to be transparent and honest with him because like, I didn't want to bring someone on and then for it to be a case of letting him down. So I just said, look, I think I need to do something new. That's where I went to university. Again, my brother and I, we kind of like decided almost together, let's do software engineering. We've always had an interest in computers. And I think that's a good bridge between like creativity. There's good money in it. I like the technical aspects and kind of building things out. So that was great. Really enjoyed university. And I think so I was 21 or 22 when I started uni, 21. So quite late. But I think it was a real benefit because it kind of gave me that context of I've worked, I've tried to earn money without it. And then going into university, I was like, okay, this is my kind of like last ditch effort. So did really well there. Great. And then did my placement year. And I was like, this is kind of not what I was expecting. It's obviously very overwhelming when you do your first actual bit of work. But I went through that, and I kind of had the same thing again. 2 months, 3 months in, I was really motivated doing stuff at home, and then I get to a point where I'm like, just this feeling of like, this isn't it. There's more that I can be doing, right? And then naturally my like motivation starts to decline, and I'm looking for things outside of working, like trying to come up with sort of business ideas and stuff. But go through that, and then go to my final year, graduate, and then I start my job in kind of what I thought was like a dream post-grad career. And then the same thing happens again, right? Where we get sort of 3 to 4 months in, my motivation just plummets, and I'm like, there's got to be more to this. And like at that stage, I was earning, I think, 27,500 in pounds, which is like $30,000. And to me, I was like, wow, that's an amazing amount of money. And then I was looking at people higher up, and I was always trying to work out like, what's my cap? Where can I'm very money motivated, right? So I was like, okay, the senior developers, how much are they earning? And it was like 50,000. And again, to me, that was like, wow, they must be so comfortable. But as time goes on, you start to realize like, I'm not enjoying this. I need to be doing my own thing. And I kind of realized that working for other people wasn't fulfilling like this internal itch that I wanted to scratch, right?
Yeah.
So started at that point, I was trying to build an Amazon FBA business. So that was my first sort of actual business venture. Started doing that. And I think it generated like 3K, 4K profit. So like not bad, but again, it was taking so much time. And I thought like, is this worth it in terms of the amount of time? Is like the potential worth it? And I kind of decided no. So dropped that, and then kind of went back to the drawing board. Then we had the crypto bull run, and I thought, great, I took my money from my Amazon that I'd earned, and also stupidly some money that I had stored in an Amazon credit card, and put it into crypto projects that I thought were going to do really well. Long story short, ended up losing absolutely everything. It's still in there, but it's worth like £100. And it's like, it was soul destroying, such a soul destroying feeling. But in a way, I'm glad that didn't happen, like, because it wouldn't have felt like an achievement. And I think that would have left a big hole of like, I haven't actually earned this money. I just got lucky. Effectively, I just won the lottery, right? So I'm glad that happened. Moving forward with that job, I just kept working, and then I started to get into web design, so freelance web design, because I thought, okay, this is another kind of like good way I can kind of use my skills and then develop it into a freelance business, and then try and scale it from there. So I started doing that, and then while doing that, landed one client, finished his website, and then I actually moved into a web design job. So I thought, again, internally, I was thinking, maybe this is what I want to do. Maybe it's more the creative side. Okay, great. Let's find a job in that. And then, as I'm sure you can imagine, the same thing happened again, where, it's kind of like 3-4 months in, I had that brick wall again of like, I'm not feeling that fire anymore. And I started to realize that this is like an inescapable feeling that I just have when I'm working for someone, right? But I don't get that when I'm doing things on my own. So like 4 years of university, I was working 10, 12 hours a day when I needed to. So like dissertation was just a complete grind, but I loved it because I knew that it was completely on me. It was my responsibility. I didn't have to work, but if I did work, I was going to get rewarded based on how much work I put in. And you don't have that same mental model working for someone else. It's very much like, well, here's what you're going to get paid. You don't get paid any extra for putting any more effort. And I think to me, that was just very unappealing. So again, in the web design job, they made me redundant, which is just like, they like to be, right? I'm very personable and I'm a good employee. But I think that effectively they let me go because I wasn't performing anymore. Completely fair enough, and again, at that stage, I was like, fuck, what am I going to do? What am I going to do now? I had actually at that point.
When was that? Was that like last year or?
That was probably just over a year ago now. So around a year and a half ago. And at that stage, my twin brother had just started looking into lead generation. So he'd just joined a group called Agency Velocity with Levi Arola, which is just a training group for anyone that doesn't know. But he said, hey, look, you should check this out. And I was just like, look, I'm doing this web design stuff at the moment, still trying to do that freelance. I have a child as well. So like that limits my time massively. And I didn't want to just take on too much at once. So I thought I need to just have a focused track here where I'm just focusing on one thing at a time. So time went on. I was also obviously just been fired. So I was looking for another software job, right? So it wasn't the right time to get into lead gen, but I thought, okay, it's a concept that sounds really cool. In my web design, that's the big thing I struggle with, is like client acquisition. How do we do outbound? Had no idea how to do that. I was just trying to cold call local businesses, no one answering. Didn't have any success. To be fair, I only called like 20 people, right? So it's not really much volume there. But I got another job in a software company. Again, great software company, really good role, really good pay as well. I think it was on like 47, right? So that's a big jump compared to where I was at before. And again, the same thing happened. You know, it's a great company, really, really respected my manager. I really got on with him. We had a great relationship. And I remember saying to my brother, like, I think this is it. I'm really enjoying this. He's like, you're delusional. He said this, you keep saying this. And I was like, I was kidding myself, really. And then we got to the 4-month mark. And again, same thing happened. So around that time is where I started to build my lead generation agency. So we managed to get within around a month and a half, I got 2 clients. So one was on commission basis. Paid me a $750 startup just because I wanted to make sure. I heard you want to have people, you want to make sure they have skin in the game, right? Otherwise, they have no investment in what you're doing. So got some money up front for that. And then I landed my first retainer client as well, which was $2,000 a month. I don't think I charged a startup fee for that either.
Okay, so the first one, that just to go back just quickly, the first one, so you did pay performance model with the first one, was that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So
nice.
Commission, that was 15% commission. Their deal size was like 35,000 plus a year. So commission wise, 15%, that could be really good. And that campaign actually went really well.
Yeah. So, and just to jump in as well, just to, were you still at the company at that point, or had you left? Okay, cool. So you still at the company?
Still at the company, because I could kind of feel this impending doom of like, this has got a very limited fuse, right? And I need to start, like, I can't keep going through this cycle of, I know this is going to end, whether it's me leaving or me being fired. I knew that how I operated, I knew that was going to happen. So I had to start thinking of like a backup plan. That backup was lead generation, right? So I was doing that as much as I could. Naturally, that's going to impact my my work rate even more. So that's kind of what happened. So got our first 2 clients. I was doing well for one of them. The other one, it's that dreaded thing where you're just not getting any traction, right? And it's like, how do you operate that? And especially that being one of your first clients, it's like, fuck, maybe it's me. Maybe I'm not. And to a degree it is. I do think it was partly to do with their offer as well. It's quite like, it was very niche. It was just digital asset management. So it's like, it didn't really have much of like a, wow, we need this right now. It wasn't really solving like a massive pain. It was more of just like a slight benefit, right? So it's quite a hard sell. Yeah. They were really good about it though. So they ended up dropping. So we got a 3-month minimum term contract. They ended up dropping after 3 months, but just said, look, it doesn't always work out. Appreciate what you did for us. We got 1 meeting in the end. So like we got something. But yeah, then I literally probably like a day or 2 after that client dropped, I had a call with my manager. In my calendar, I saw Ben, Sam, and I was like, I know what this is. And that's why you'll see on my YouTube videos, I have it recorded where my manager's actually firing me, because I recorded it with my phone, because I knew that I wanted to document a process. I was trying to document the process of web design, and I knew I wanted to do the same with lead generation. So I thought, this is going to be really good. Let's just record that, because I just had this feeling where I knew this is going to be really cool to have that conversation recorded to look back on. Anyway, long story short, he just said, look, today's going to be your last day. Blah, 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 blah. I don't feel like you're sort of meeting our expectations effectively. And I just said, look, pretty much I agree. No bad feelings at all. Genuinely really appreciate and respect you and the team and everything you've done for me. And I'm sorry it didn't work out. And like, to me, there is a level of guilt there, because, I don't want to be that guy that's getting fired and not pulling their weight in a company, but it's just, I couldn't help it. Right. And because I knew I had to do more than that. So it was like having to make that sacrifice. I needed income. And then if you don't have a business, you have to have a job. So I was fired, and then I was like, fuck. I remember sitting there thinking like, okay, what do I do now? And I just took a day to kind of just process those feelings. Naturally, you feel very like mixed emotions, especially being fired like that. Normally you have a bit of time to prepare, but that was actually the best thing that ever happened to me, because they gave me 1 month's pay. So I had 30 days of money to work with, where I could focus purely on my business, right? They also let me keep the laptop, because I didn't have another computer. And that was another problem, is that my only source of a computer was the company laptop. So they let me keep that. So in terms of actually an exit package, it couldn't be any better. And then I just kind of, after that day of processing stuff, I just kind of had this feeling of like, I just need to scale. So I bought 20 more email accounts. I just thought, right, let's just fucking ram, because that's what's going to, I need to get more meetings means more potential clients. And then I think within around 5 days, I signed my first new client. That was on a $3,000 retainer, $2,000 startup fee, and I'm still with them now. Their campaign's going really, really well.
Boom. So that's awesome.
That began the journey.
That began the journey. Wow. That is just, you know, it's really interesting, because I feel like a lot of other individuals that are getting started and they're a little bit scared and don't know what comes next, but to be able to see that, you know, you had that conversation, you were let go, and then you then were like, okay, I'll take a day to process it. And then what am I going to do? Am I going to either drown, or am I going to go for it? And I'm going to level up. I'm going to approach new individuals, scale up my campaigns, keep my head focused, and understand that all I need is new meetings to be able to then potentially create conversations that can result in an opportunity. So I think, especially for anyone that's listening, this pretty early stage, to be able to see, you know, trust your gut, focus on a goal to be able to keep going. It's really interesting and inspiring. So yeah, wow, that was a really cool journey to see how you've gone from the origin all the way through. Fair play.
And it wasn't you know, there was a lot of doubt in my mind, but I did have that deep underlying feeling of like, I know I can make this work. Because there was a part of me that thought maybe I should kind of do 50-50, apply for more, and then spend half my time building my agency and kind of see what works out. But I just thought, you know what, fuck it. Like, it's now or never. Much that kind of feeling of like, it's now or never. Let's just go.
You can either have and you can have that protection, right? You can either go, okay, I'm going to do my CV, I'm going to now apply for jobs. But if there's doubt, you often won't succeed. You have to go for it. It's so yeah, like I get that. That's interesting. So okay, you managed to be able to pick up clients with, I guess, like no lead gen experience of them generating leads yourself from like, you know, as a result of your web design activities, and then ultimately what you were doing to generate leads. How did you go about formalizing your initial service offering to be able to win the clients? I guess you did the pay performance model, but then what made you look at a retainer? What did that initial setup look like? And yeah, talk me through that, how you formalized that initial offering.
Sure. So we was always offering a retainer, and again, being completely honest, I used my brother's, because he'd had experience. He said I could use his case study as like leverage. I know a lot of, so like Alex, I can't remember his name. He's the author of Cold Email Manifesto, the book.
Berman.
Berman. Yeah. He said in his book, you know, this is another thing you can do. So I think it's kind of questionable, but like at the end of the day, I knew that I could do it, and I knew I had the support net to be able to do that. So I thought it was okay to do that. And like, to a degree, you have two options. You either go purely performance pay, where it's like they have no risk whatsoever, or you do something like that. That's the option I took. So that kind of gave us some leverage to be able to kind of start pushing those retainers off the get-go. And I'm glad I did that.
Did you have any guarantees within that offer to be like, if we don't get you calls, we will work, you know, or until we do, or like anything like that? You know, some people have some guarantees, or was it just purely retainer setup? Yeah.
So my first meeting I had, my first offer was, we'll guarantee, I can't remember how many leads, but we'll guarantee X amount of leads. Otherwise we'll refund everything. Right. And then a client was going ahead with that, and they ended up like not going ahead with that. And I thought, like, can I actually afford to do that as a business? It's like, no, I can't afford to do that. So I just scrapped that. And I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to offer a guarantee. at all. And, obviously that naturally is going to reduce the amount of people you can potentially onboard, because a guarantee is a no-brainer for a company. But again, I had to weigh up, like, is this actually affordable for me to be able to offer a guarantee? And I just thought, like, no, like, where would that money come from? Because you have expenses, etc. I don't have the money saved to be able to actually pay for that. So I just thought, let's scrap that, because that could be a disaster and like a business ending move. So I just scrapped the guarantee completely and just said, like, look, this is the service. Didn't really talk about a guarantee at all, and then just went forward with straight retainer.
Okay, cool. And then in terms of the service, it was like, what did it look like? Was it set to hey, we're doing, obviously it's email, it was a cold email service, but yeah, what did that look like? Was it set on volume, sends, like, what were you offering within that monthly?
So first one was just from the top. I just plucked a number out of thin air of like what I thought it was worth, right? So didn't really look at any sort of like, okay, you pay this amount for a certain amount of volume. It was just a case of, okay, well, you pay me 2K a month, we'll deploy an email campaign. And my first campaign was with 10 email accounts, and I was doing it a really, really expensive way, 1 domain per email account. I wasn't using any sort of resellers, so it was like full price. We didn't really have an actual structure in terms of the offer. We just said, like, that we'll have 10 email accounts to begin with, and then as time goes on, we can scale once we start seeing results.
Okay, nice. That's interesting. And then how did you go about winning? So obviously you said, like, you had the case studies, and I think actually that's also a really good lesson for people who are getting into it. If you were to have someone where you would white label their service, for example, someone is doing it and you're selling it, that's not this case, but there is a way to be able to leverage someone's case study like that as well. And, so think about these creative ways when you are looking at how to acquire the initial people and who you can lean on for case studies. But in terms of the initial clients, how did you go about acquiring those? You said you were going after B2B tech companies. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was just very typical, sort of go to Crunchbase, filter. So I was aiming for SaaS, but I was just looking at volume, right? When I ticked the SaaS box, it was like, okay, I want a bit more than that. So I just thought, fuck it, let's just go. While I'm in the beginning stages, let's just go all types of software. So just tick the software box, and then kind of just took away, like, I didn't really want to work with software development and just a couple of other ones, but gave me like around 40K companies based in the US. I was only targeting US as well, just because I knew there was much more money there as well. But yeah, from Crunchbase, just got the contacts. It was a very, very rudimentary campaign. There was no personalization, very basic. I didn't even know Clay was a thing. I didn't really know you could even use AI at that point, right? So it's very, very basic. But that was the initial strategy.
Okay, cool. And were you going off to companies of a certain size, like maybe like they just raised a round, like a Series A or a seed round, and they were scaling, or was it just purely just take anyone?
So again, so before I did any of this, I read obviously Alex Berman's Cold Email Manifesto. That was a really good, for anyone to listen, that's a really good place to start. Great information.
I read that as well.
In there, he mentions about like the golden goose companies, and like from memory, it was like anywhere from 5 mil to 150 mil revenue, I believe. So like bigger companies, there's way too much bureaucracy, and like the sales cycle is far too long. If they have less than 5 million, they just don't have enough money. So there's sort of that nice bridge between 5 and 150 million revenue, where it's like, okay, they have enough money to just think, fuck it, yeah, let's give this a go. And it's not going to take them like months to decide, right? So that was our only actual filter. We weren't looking at like recently funded, anything like that. It was just revenue based.
Okay, nice. Yeah, you're right there as well. And also, once you find that sweet spot, they see it as a test as opposed to you're playing with someone's life. And that is key, because you can spend a lot of time with the wrong type of client where, they are, it's like, this is a make or break. And that means that it's out of personal pocket. And then they don't look at this as an experiment to understand what is the right way to be able to accelerate their offer and convert it in the best way possible. It's more so like, I need this to work. And if it doesn't, like, there's lots in terms of red flags there. So it's better to focus on people that see it as a test and allocate spend from budget companies, that is.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Okay, interesting. And then in terms of today, like for fast forwards, so how long are you into the journey now? How long have you been going?
So I think all in all, it's been around 4 months since I was fired, and the total journey's been around 6 months. So like I'm still very early on, and I was actually
Yes.
thinking about this the other day. Like you get into a stage where it's like you almost feel like you haven't got anything else to learn, which is ridiculous, right? And it's like I kind of caught myself thinking that the other day. It's like there's so much more to learn. You know, I don't have any sales experience. I've never been an SDR. And copywriting, you know, operations, delivery, you know, infrastructure, there's tons to learn. So like I kind of thought to myself, you need to be setting time aside now to be focusing on developing these skills individually, and not kind of like let your ego take over and think, no, we don't need to learn that. We're good. We just keep doing things the same way we're doing it and hope it kind of works out. I think that's a really bad mentality and something I'm trying to combat.
You have to evolve. That is key. You know, what's the next thing? Is it doubling down with connecting email to ads, to retarget, whatever it is? You know, what's the next trend? Definitely makes sense. And yeah, so just going back to before we jump into, I want to talk about client fulfillment and then go into talking about campaigns in more detail. But like, so you're now 6 months, let's say, into the journey, and you're now in terms of where are you at in terms of like clients and revenue, just to understand, because it's been impressive and you've documented that on a YouTube channel. So I'd love to share that.
Sure. So I think when we last spoke, monthly recurring revenue was 16,000. Unfortunately, now so we had a client drop, and they cancelled midway through their term, so the 3-month minimum term. Really frustrating. And after speaking to a couple of guys in the group, just decided, look, they owed me 7,000. They've paid 3.5 of that. Just cut ties and kind of leave it on a good note. I didn't do anything wrong. I don't really know what happened there, but they had a new kind of head of sales come in, and he just completely just took over and said, look, we don't want to do this anymore. Became quite like borderline aggressive. It was kind of frustrating, but again, just decided, okay, let's just leave that there. Again, their campaign wasn't getting any traction, but that's just the way it goes sometimes. But that brought us down to around, was it 13,000? So I'm at 10,000 at the moment. I've got a client that's paid their startup fee, but I'm having a problem with them because they don't pay the retainer until our campaigns start, right? But they are just not doing any onboarding at all. It's been around a month now since they paid the startup fee, or over a month. I've sent them emails, say, hey, jump in the Slack channel. Let's fill out the onboarding form. Let's get an onboarding call. Nothing, you know. All these sent me a list of people to add to the Slack channel, which I did. None of them joined, and it's like, where do I go from here? You know, part of me is like, I need to drop them, but I can't afford to do that at the moment. So it's like I need to, and it's taught me I need something in my contract to circumvent that in the future of like, okay, you have this amount of time to kind of complete the onboarding flow just to protect us, because at the minute they can just, I'm paying monthly for their email accounts, etc., and there's nothing I can really do about it. So, but yeah, 10,000 at the moment. There's a lot in the pipeline. Could take us to around 20, but 10,000 at the moment is now kind of like my panic number. It's like, shit, we need to, that's very much, we need to start scaling back up again, because I was getting close to 20. So I have made the mistake as well of stopping doing my own outreach, which is a really, I've made that mistake multiple times now. And I need to stop that, because I need continuous pipeline coming in, because you never know what will happen. So that's where we're at the moment. But yeah, things are looking up.
Yeah, that's the way you've got to look at it. And like you said, you've got pipeline, and these are just some of the challenges where you onboard a lot of clients, you then allocate your time to onboarding, you then allocate your own time to building your campaigns, and then you need to focus on processes to be able to ensure that you can still allocate time to be able to do that. You're like, I experienced that as well previously, having a lead gen agency. We would have 6 clients come through, we'd make like 12 to 15K in 1 month, and we'd be laughing. And the next thing you know, 2 months later, we've just been onboarding all of them. The setup took way too long, and you're now in a place where you're like, wait, what? I'm now not able to get new clients because we stopped our own campaigns, and it takes a month to, or even 2 really, to kick it back up and get momentum to be consistently booking calls. So the biggest learning was never let the campaigns run out, always keep them running. And that is the way. But yeah, that's interesting. So in terms of your, like, you want to dive into like your client fulfillment process. and like delivery? What does it look like to be able to like manage the fulfillment aspect of your clients? You mentioned you have Slack. Do you use like a project management board? And yeah, like how do you manage a client from signing through to launching their campaigns?
Sure. So again, up until like maybe a month ago, it's been very, very rudimentary. Haven't used any massive like project management. I've been doing everything inside of Notion, and not even a project management inside of there, just like making a checklist, right, for each client. So the typical flow, get them to fill out an onboarding form. I use Typeform for that, just kind of outline, okay, who's your ICP? What's your target market? What problem are you solving? You know, it goes into much more detail than that, but that just gives me sort of like the bare bone information that I need. And then following that, we go into an onboarding call. And then I'm just kind of bridging the gap between the information they've provided me and then the information that I think I need to know to be able to go out and start like developing experiments and campaigns, etc. So that generally lasts around an hour or two. Once we have that information, we start going through, obviously by the email account, start warming them up. We do a 2-week warm-up process. I know people say 2-3 weeks, but 2 weeks has worked fine for us. And then from there, just using Slack to kind of just go over the campaign. So start doing copywriting. Say, hey, what do you think about this as an example, as a potential angle, as an experiment? Like, okay, great. Or they'll say, no, don't like that at all. I think the hardest thing is like, we use very casual language, and that's like typically what cold email experts will do is like, but the business people will be like, we want it to be more professional, like dear so-and-so, hope this email finds like, we need to drop that. And it's that sometimes is quite hard converting them over to that school of thought, but they have to have trust of we've done this, we've generated results, we know this works. I know it seems a bit counterintuitive, but we're reaching out to a human and we want this to be very conversational, as if it's been sent by a human to another human, right? So, but yeah, ultimately, once everything's signed off, we launch the campaign. And again, another thing I've been lacking on is actual like running multiple experiments. So a lot of my campaigns at the start for my first few clients are very much just like set the campaign and let it go. Whereas what I'm doing now is like, I realized that was somewhat lazy. So I need to be running multiple experiments off the get-go of like, okay, great. Let's try this ICP. Let's try this messaging. Let's try this different vertical of a company, you know, whatever it may be. Let's try multiple different things. And that's going to give us the best chance of making sure that the client gets the best fulfillment as possible. The biggest thing I've learned as well is like, client churn has got to be the absolute like utmost priority of like minimizing churn, because the amount of effort it takes to land a new client versus keep one is night and day. So making sure that absolute priority is just continue testing for clients, doing everything you can. And sometimes you feel like there's nothing else I can do, but then you take a day to kind of work through it, find new leads. For example, we've got a hotel client and they have a hotel software company. And it's incredibly hard to find hotel contacts, right? And our first campaign was the best campaign I've ever done, was getting like a meeting booked after every probably 40 replies, which was amazing. And I thought, this is brilliant. And then, because I thought it's a massive TAM as well, hotels, like hotels everywhere, but they're all managed by the same companies like Hilton, Marriott.
There's groups.
And I was like, fuck, it's really hard to find these contacts. Like obviously you've got Apollo and LinkedIn. And also when you're trying to filter hotels, you end up with like hotel cleaning companies, concierge, food companies. And it's actually really hard to pinpoint those companies. And we kind of ran out of leads effectively. And I thought like, what do we do here? Like the guy, he's not cancelled yet, but I was like, I don't know what to do. And then I just spent like 2 or 3 days just going through different like lead sourcing on Apollo, different filters. Managed to find a solution. So there's always one out there, right? It's just a case of how can we identify these people, right? So, but yeah, main objective at the moment is just minimizing churn, optimizing our campaign delivery.
That's really interesting. And in terms of like, I think a big value add that you just mentioned as well, like your differentiator, Standout, is also like you're willing to be able to go and check if it doesn't work in the typical process to be able to generate leads. You're going to go and strategize the most efficient proof to be able to actually generate contacts as a result of looking at everything out there. Other individuals will have a stuck in process where they're like, we're doing this, we're going through Apollo, we're not going to divert and change the approach if we're just going to say, sorry, like the TAM isn't done. But like that is actually a really good standout differentiator to be like, hey, like, you know, we're willing to be able to look and investigate and understand what is the most efficient play and then go there because we're bespoke effectively. So that's awesome. And it's interesting to hear. In terms of, so you do the initial onboarding call, you then align like what they've said in the onboarding form with that within the call. And then how do you go about translating that into the angles and the persona? And what does an angle look like as well?
So again, up until like maybe 2 months ago, I was just doing everything from the top of my head. I didn't really have a system.
Yeah.
Been following a lot of, I'm going to butcher his pronunciation, but Jed Marley. And he has a really good system where you're kind of like identifying the pain points, looking for potential triggers that identify those pain points. And it's a much more systematic process where you outline everything beforehand. That gives you the information that you need to, okay, great. These are the pain points. These are the potential triggers. Can we find leads with these triggers? If we can, okay, let's work that into our copy. So let's use my database client as an example. So they're a fractional database administration company. It took us around the first 3 weeks. We didn't get any, we got one meeting, right? And it was like, so that was my first client I signed after getting fired. And I was like, oh shit, like this isn't looking good. But again, went back to the drawing board. We was initially focusing on companies that are going on Indeed, looking for companies that are hiring for database administrators, because obviously they have intent for hiring these kind of people, but we were getting no responses whatsoever, which surprised me. But then as an alternative strategy, we thought, okay, well, we can kind of reach out to anyone. Like most companies are going to have a database, and most companies of a certain size are going to need a database administrator. So we thought most companies, 5 mil revenue plus, will need a database administrator. So I just went through on Apollo. We got like 200,000 contacts of like director to C-level plus in engineering. And in the personalization, we're just saying, hey, notice you have X amount of database administrators at this company, including Ben and Noah, for example. Would a fractional model help you to, cut costs, for example? That's not the exact copy, but by having that personalization in there, especially where it says, notice you don't currently have a database administrator, they're like, oh, wow, okay, this sounds really good. We do want one. We don't want to hire time. We've addressed their pain. We have the solution. Let's book a meeting. So like that's in a nutshell what we're trying to do. And if we can have personalization there, that's the main thing I'm looking for, is having personalization that calls out specifically the pain in their company. I think Eric Norslowski, he calls it problem sniffing. So that's really a big key and something we look for in outreach.
That's interesting. And then also not taking what the client says as, hey, this is the persona, this is who we're reaching out to in terms of like titles, verticals, and niches, and being, but like, hey, I've had to think about your offer, the problem, and how you're actually perceived, and like how that can be addressed. And I feel like there is multiple audiences which this could be relevant to. With that said, let's test this vertical, this type of business as well, and see if that works. And I think like that is key, that what you're doing as well, because a lot of agencies will go and onboard a client based off titles and verticals that are provided from the client, but then not pivot based off of applying the logic of what if we could test another angle within a different niche, or test the approach and problem with another audience. So that's interesting.
100%. And just on that as well, like going back to that client, so he did exactly that. He gave us a list of like 50 different job titles. So from like manager level to C level. And it was like, there's so many people there, right? So what I did when I was kind of like figuring out how to make this campaign better is that every interested response I got, I looked up their job title, put it into a spreadsheet, and built a graph of like, okay, which job titles is this most resonating with? And that gave us like 5 or 6. So in the second campaign where I had the personalization in there, I used those job titles. And I think the two things combined, so including the personalization and then filtering the job title down to those titles that were actually displaying interest, that was a huge game changer. And it's something that I now do for all of my clients. So looking at who's actually responding to this, who's actually resonating, and then working out, okay, well, we can see on the graph, it's mainly like VP engineering or director of IT, rather than like manager of blah, 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 what they thought it would have been. So that's been a massive game changer.
That's really cool. What I did with, because I actually started on the LinkedIn lead gen side, so I did not email. I get email. But within LinkedIn lead gen, what we did was we built out the persona, but then had statuses, a qualified status and disqualified status. And what we do is we qualify the conversation to understand, based off of who the individual that has responded to, whether they actually align or not. And what that enabled us to do at the end of the campaign is go, okay, cool. Out of this campaign, there were 80 disqualified individuals and 30 qualified. What's that tell us? It tells us the quality is we need to double down on those 30. So it's exactly what you're saying right now, but using the replies as opposed to the actual profiles. It's using profiles and replies, what you're doing. We were looking at the profile in itself and then looking at the reply later down the line. So I feel like that's super, super cool because it helps refine your lists and then also understand what resonated within the copy and at what stages to understand what to pull out to be able to form the next sequence with the right individuals.
That's something we're trying to automate at the moment as well, because you can do it manually, but trying to rely on automations to do this stuff. And I can talk a bit more about, so I've paid for an automation operation system. I can talk about that like later in the call. That's really pivotal. So remind me, because that's
I will. I actually remember seeing you speak about that in a video, saying that you have invested in moving yourself forwards, and I watched that. I'm a YouTube fan of you, so it's good. So I wanted to maybe so like we've spoken about kind of like measuring campaigns, so I think it makes more sense to jump into reporting and understand so what we're looking at in terms of a couple of things. Firstly, when a campaign is doing well, how do we approach scaling that out? Like, what would be the play to be able to do that? Is that adding more emails, or is that like expanding the audience? What's that look like?
So if a campaign's going well, again, use database for an example, start with 15. If there's a big enough TAM, we will just keep adding more email accounts. So again, that TAM is like, pretty much infinite because we can just keep recycling it. But we're at 45 email accounts for them at the moment. And I've started charging $500 per 15 email accounts. So like there's a bit of profit in there for me as well, but I also have to factor in the amount of time that it takes to do the inbox management and stuff. So I know companies sometimes do it more expensive than that, but right now that just feels like a sensible number to just scale up $500 per 15 email accounts. But in terms of scaling, that is the only thing we do.
Okay, cool, awesome. So you will then add additional emails, and that increases the volume, which should in turn increase the level of replies and the level of calls booked. And like metric. Sorry, go on.
We have in the past. Added more emails per account, right? So going from 30 to 50, but I found emails started burning, right? So I just thought, let's play this really safe. I need to make sure that the email accounts, that's, if we don't have that, we don't have anything. So I think taking a safer approach has definitely worked better for me. So I just 30 maximum send per day. And then if I need to add more email accounts at 30, rather than just adding more emails per account, I feel like that's been the more beneficial approach.
That's actually super like good to be able to also like tell everyone this feedback. Like you need to actually add more domains, email addresses, and create an additional arsenal to increase volume as opposed to just increasing the emails. And in terms of metrics, what are you looking at as like indicators to understand how a campaign is performing?
So, the first one is very, very controversial. I'm not sure how I feel about it, and you're probably going to know what I'm going to say, but it's open rates, right? So open rates are the most controversial subject in outbound at the moment because everyone says they're fake. And like to a degree, I agree. So I did a test the other day where I have 150 domain or email accounts. I launched a campaign targeting those and then didn't open any of them. And it got a 95% open rate. And I was like, wow, okay. And I think potentially what was happening, I was getting the notifications on my phone from Gmail, and maybe that counts as an open. But what I don't know is that, like, okay, I accept that they can be inflated, but can they be like, I've got one campaign that's doing like 17% open rate at the moment. It's just launched. I'm like, what's going on there? Because as much as I think they can be inflated, can they be deflated that much? I think there is some level of like, some level of data you can take away from that. Because to me, if a campaign's doing that low, you've got a problem somewhere. But these are fresh domains. So I'm like, I don't know what's going on with that campaign. I don't know. But first thing is open rates. I keep them on. There's only one campaign I don't have them on, just because we're targeting like, again, when you're targeting like VP engineering type roles, typically they're very good at not allowing emails to come through. So naturally the open rate is going to be lower. So we just thought, fuck it, let's turn them off for that. That's the database client. But
Yeah.
the next one, and again, I don't really go into much detail about this. I just look at positive replies and positive replies. I think if I'm getting replies on a campaign, even if they're negative, then I think, okay, good. Like at least I know this is actually going. That's like more validation that people are actually seeing it compared to open rates. So if we're getting response, great. Like again, the database client, we were getting responses, but not a lot of them were positive. So shifting that, okay, we change our strategy. They're now becoming positive responses. So ultimately positive responses. And then the next tier after that is, okay, how many people are actually booking meetings? That was our next problem, is that people were responding positively. We sent them more information, which is our usual flow. Can I send over some more info? Send it over, book a meeting. But people weren't booking meetings. So like sent like 15 of those, and I think one person booked a meeting. So I was like, this can be improved. And it was really interesting because I went back to the drawing board with what we were saying, and I didn't say anything largely different. I just changed the wording. And by that, like we're now probably booking like, for every 5 more information sent out, we're probably booking like 3 meetings. So that's a really, really good thing to think about, is that like, make sure that your sales asset, whatever you're sending out as the more information, is like enticing people to jump on a meeting and giving them that excited feeling of like, wow, okay, great. This, like there's now value for me to jump on the call. This is exactly what I want. And I don't think we had that with our first iteration of the more information. So
yeah, that's cool as well. Sorry, go on. Yeah, this is gold.
Ultimately, it comes down to how many meetings are you booking. But I think there's levels below that where you can start to get some indication of like, okay, this is working. We need to iterate this or iterate that to improve. Yeah,
no, I was just going to say like that. Yeah, that's interesting, and it's effectively what you've done here through that explanation is broken down. The first step is to be able to focus on generating replies, create engagement, because that's the first hurdle. And then following that, you want to be able to create positive replies. It doesn't matter if you get not interested, you've solved problem number 1, you have replies. Then all you need to do is understand how to convert to more positive replies. And then following that, get people to, if they are not converting, change the way that you're either, like you said, positioning what you are offering to someone in another way, which doesn't stop the number of influx from replies, but just increases the number of positive and then conversions through to a meeting or intent point, which is interested. They want something. They say yes to a call to action. So like, that's cool. What you're doing and how you're approaching that, and interesting. And it shows you don't really need to focus on the metrics. You need to just focus on those endpoints and then just look at how to be able to improve those. Yeah.
100%.
Are you exporting that data and putting it into a sheet to be able to analyze after every campaign? Are you checking each week in Smart Lead or instantly or wherever you're running things?
Not doing any exports. I just have all my campaigns just in Smart Lead to just kind of like working out like which campaigns have performed best, just kind of like comparing them. There's probably a better way of doing it, but again, haven't got that far with it yet.
That's the way to do it. Like you shouldn't spend too much time building too many processes at the start. The scrappier, the better. Yeah, that's cool. I'm a person that spends too much time building processes. I have to be more scrappy. Yeah, that's awesome though. Yeah, so I'm talking about tooling. I want to just jump back and just understand. So what is in your tech stack? You said Crunchbase. You said, so what do you use to be able to create the campaigns, from creating the contacts and kind of like typical things, and then running campaigns, and then finally, how do you approach creating the copy? Is there AI and things that come into play? Yeah, that'd be good to understand.
Sure. So lead sourcing, typically Crunchbase, or at least for my own campaigns, is typically Crunchbase. Depends on the filters they need, right? So Crunchbase is pretty good as a starting point, but I've started using a lot of Sales Nav at the moment, just because a really good feature I like in there is that you can search for keywords in their LinkedIn profile. So like, I'm working with a company that has a GraphQL platform. So with that, we're finding people that mention GraphQL on their platform and then using that inside of Clay to develop some kind of automation. So I saw you have recently built a so-and-so GraphQL, or you manage the GraphQL platform at so-and-so company. It's like, we know that we're reaching out to the exact right person in the company, and we're also delivering some personalization about how they actually use GraphQL. So that's been really, really good for us. It took me a while to get on Sales Nav. It was only like 2 months ago that I kind of just experimented with it, but that's becoming our main source at the moment, is Sales Navigator. Apollo is great. Really, really good. What else is there? I mean, to be honest, the main bulk is Crunchbase, Apollo, Sales Nav. Sometimes we'll use like Appify or Wappalizer. So like Wappalizer if we need to find a particular tech stack, but I've had mixed results with Wappalizer because I just find it's I was trying to look for companies using PostgreSQL on there, and they gave me a list of like 10,000, but when you actually came down to it, there were tons of subdomains. It was like, by the time we finished processing the leads, we ended up with like 300, and it's like, okay, I ended up getting a refund for that particular project. But yeah, there's tons of stuff out there. Like local leads as well, Appify was really, really helpful for just going like Google Map scraping, going state by state. That was for the hotel campaign. So like figuring out, okay, well, hotels are everywhere. How can we hit every single individual hotel? I know we're getting off the tech stack, but I'll try and work it.
No, it's super cool to be able to see like you're leveraging all of these different tools, like to be able to get through to understand the right play. What do you do? So after you've attained the data, you're then using Clay to be able to do email validation, personalization, and enrichment, or is it something like where you don't do that and you use something else?
No, okay. Always in Clay now. So again, I wasn't using Clay before. I was using GPT Sheets, which is, I cannot believe using that, because that was the biggest headache ever. My screen would freeze and it'd be like, oh god, and then it was just a nightmare. So Clay's been a massive game changer. Nice. We do every kind of Clay. So email finding using ICPs and Prospio, we have API keys for those, and then using drop contact and find email as the Clay integration. So a 5-step waterfall for finding emails. Email validation using debounce now. Was using Million Verify before, but I've moved away from that. Anything obviously like the AI is a huge part. Anything else that I'm using, and Scrubby as well. So like a big thing, and I know a lot of people with catch-all emails, they'll just send them without actually verifying them. I've had issues with really high bounce rates, and I don't know if that's why, but just as like an extra precaution, of my email list, I'll create a valid column and a catch-all column. And then for all of the catch-alls, when we get to like 2,000 to 3,000, I'll export the catch-alls into Scrubby, which allows you to basically revalidate those catch-alls to make sure, okay, are these actually valid? And normally it's like 80%. So it's like a really good way to kind of get more contacts in there. I haven't actually tried sending them out without verifying them. People have had success with that, but I don't know. To me, it feels risky, right? So
you're right. It does feel risky. I as well have seen bounce rates higher if you do anything that's not true or valid effectively. In terms of copy, do you use, like, what's the process to create copy? Obviously the ideation session with your client, but are you just going into a doc and writing that and then taking some triggers to personalize different points, or are you using a nice prompt in ChatGPT? Like, what's it look like to set up that campaign copy in the steps?
Yeah, pretty much just doing it in Google Docs. So just kind of coming up with ideas, and I always start with, like, as I said, the Jed Marley's form now, just to kind of create a bit of a system in there of like, okay, what are the pain points, what are potential triggers, and then based on those, creating different angles depending on what data we can find based on those triggers. So very, very basic copy. You try to keep it as simple as possible, but just like introduction, personalization, value proposition, and then a call to action, right? And then if they have some kind of like credibility in there, I'll either put that above the call to action, or in like a PS, we help so-and-so generate X amount, whatever. But yeah, typically it's always following that process. And then always, I've now started just following a 3-step sequence. So first email, second email, a break off. So second email, I always like to use bullet points in that. So just including 3 bullet points that are like something that they could benefit from in the platform. So 3 key features. They're like, oh, wow, that's really interesting. I don't really feel that into the first email because it's like less conversational and it's more, it comes across more salesy, but I feel like a second email is perfect for that. And then the third email, again, using Eric Nowoslawski's technique, where he just says, hey, reached out a few days ago regarding this. I feel like you might not be feel like this may not be in your purview because I haven't had anything back. Can you suggest someone to reach out to? That's been a fantastic email to have as a final touch because it does one or 2 things. It will like, well, one of 3 things. I'll either ignore it and tell you to go away. Or they will say, okay, great. Yeah, no, I'm not the right person to speak to. Speak to this person. Or it will say, or they'll say, sorry, I've been really busy. So it kind of like it's a real call to action for them where they're like, I am actually interested. You're not going to contact me again. I'll send an email saying, hey, look, busy right now. Let's chat next week or 2 weeks. So that's been our highest converting email on most of our campaigns.
And will you change the subject line on email 3 or not? Is it just the same as email 1 and 2 and 3?
I use the same subject line for absolutely every campaign, which is just client name, M- their name. So it'd be like Ben M- Noah. And it's like, if it's not broken, don't fix it. You know, some campaigns I'll test like different subject lines, but 99 times out of 100, that one performs the best. So
that's interesting. And I think it is a good time to be able to talk a little bit about that tool that you invested in to help move yourself forwards, just to be able to catch replies from what I understand. So it'd be cool to just understand what the idea was and what that was all about.
Sure. So obviously it's just me in the company at the moment. So like there are lots of things that take tons of time in the business. So like inbox management being the main one. So my brother told me about this system. Someone in his in agency Velocity had this. He was like an operations expert, and he has developed this operations system. So you pay him $4,000. He'll come into your agency, basically create a automation system. So it's all done on Airtable, and then using I think Make to do the automation. So instead of like, you know, at the moment, what was my process before, right? So someone responds with interest. I have, I can't remember what it's called. I think it's called Blaze, where you just type / campaign name - interested, and it will just paste it for you, right? And then I would add them to my CRM, put the touch point to 2 days, check my CRM every day, go through, okay, I need to send touch 2 to this guy. So now I type in campaign name, like touch point 2, whatever I had it set to, right? So it's very, very manual. So what this actually does is there's a lot of upfront work. We have to create all the different copywriting for every single possible flow. So an interested flow, not interested, a future sequence. If they say not right now, contact me in 2 months. Not interested, you know, every possible eventuality of what they could reply if you create a campaign flow for that. And then what the automation system allows you to do is, if I get an interested reply, I mark them as information sequence. So if they like my main call to action is, can I send them some more info? They say, yeah, sure. Mark them as information sequence. It will automatically, within 3 minutes, send them that information sequence. And then it will automatically just follow up with them, you know, 2 days, 4 days. So it's like having an inbox manager without actually having one, right? All I need to do is tag them correctly. There's other stuff on there as well. You've got all your financials in there. So like, it's just the absolute ultimate hub for lead generation operations, basically. There's another cool feature in there. It allows you to white label. I know you do this smartly, but it allows you to white label your system. So when there's a sequence in there called custom sequence, right? So a lot of times you'll get a reply where it's like, I can't answer this, I need my client's input. So it all integrates with Slack, so any meetings booked, etc., will be put in the Slack for documentation. But if you mark them as custom sequence, it will send a message to Slack saying, hey, we've got the response from so-and-so, we can't reply to it, please click this link to reply. That allows them to then go in, send the reply themselves, and then once they've sent that, it will then start the follow-up sequence. So it's kind of like, it really has been a game changer. And something that I'm asking him to do with it at the moment is to like add something in to do that automatic ICP analysis. So like any campaign that we have interested responses from, take those interested people, enrich them in Apollo, and then build a graph giving us all the demographics of like, okay, what's the company size? What's their revenue? What's their location? What kind of roles are responding? Just to kind of give us that data that I would be getting manually, that sometimes I can be quite lazy with, and get that on an automatic basis. So, but all in all, that has been a game changer. So, I mean, if it's okay as well, I'm sure a lot of people will be interested in that.
Yeah.
If we can leave somewhere for that, because
we can maybe drop it in the comments.
I mean, feel free to drop me an email or message me on Twitter or something. I'm happy to send this information. But honestly, that's been a massive game changer, and I think where bringing staff on board as well is going to make their job a lot easier, rather than actually having to go in and do all this stuff manually. It streamlines the process massively. And I did start trying to build my automations myself, but I quickly realized this is such a time sink. So I just thought, fuck, pay the 4K, and then we've got it done.
Allocation of time, right? It's all about spending time in the right areas. And if you can use someone to leverage to accelerate your further, and it's going to really help you, it makes sense to do that. So it's cool. The cool thing there is not just what you've got built out, but how you identified the different areas that you need help in to be able to help you to scale out, which is interesting. For example, right now you wanted to be able to take yourself away from handling any of the individuals on replying a sequence, which is, like if they reply positively, then have several follow-ups, and how to be able to take that off. And then following that, you then identify the reporting aspects. I need to be able to get that solved. So it's cool to see these different pockets, which you're highlighting, that can take you away from spending time there to be able to scale that out more effectively. And then, like you said, enable someone to have a better experience when they do join you, to be able to solve that and, take care of that side of the business. I think this is an interesting spin to be able to just talk about. So scaling, you mentioned you're focusing on hiring at the moment. So what does that look like now, like going forwards and scaling Envio Studio?
Yeah, so conducted 2 interviews. There's one person that I'm really interested in. At the minute, like obviously we our revenue dropped to it, right? So I'm like, I need to balance whether or not it makes sense to bring someone on board for 2 reasons, right? Yeah. So I need to, first of all, make sure that I understand my operating system. It's relatively new, and he had it like 3 weeks. I need to make sure that I understand that and become an absolute expert with that. So I've been focusing on just going through all his SOPs to make sure I fully understand absolutely everything, so that I can train someone else on it to be as effective as possible. The second thing is, obviously, I have a responsibility if I hire someone to be able to pay them on a regular basis, despite it being a contract position. Like when I bring someone on board, I want to take care of them. I want them to grow with my company, and I'm not taking that lightly, right? So I don't want to fuck anyone over. Am I allowed? I hope I'm allowed to swear.
It's all good. It's all good. The British, it's all fine.
Yeah. But since our revenues dropped, I'm kind of thinking like my gut's telling me now is not the right time. So it kind of sucks. You've done all the interviews, you're gonna have to let people down, but I have to be sensible and make the decision from a non-emotional perspective. So I think that's kind of where I'm at. But like I said, we've got a lot in the pipeline. So I've partnered with, partnered with this fractional sales leader. So he offers his services for $13,000 a month to companies. And then he just said, look, I need someone to do the email side of things. So he's got lots of continual business coming in. He works with a lot of investment companies. So he said he's got 3 proposals out at the moment. I typically get around $3,500 to $4,000 per month for those. So like if they close, we're back up like above 20, right?
That's awesome.
So turn around very, very quickly, but I can't make decisions based on like, there might be a chance they don't go ahead. So I can't put myself in a position where it's like, fuck, none of them closed. We haven't got clients. I now have the responsibility of paying someone, but we can't afford to pay them. And like, what do I do at that point? So I need to be sensible here. And I think the move is to just pause recruitment for the time being until we're a bit more comfortable financially.
Okay, cool. So plans, like you said, are to be able to focus on, understanding everything in operations, then be able to scale back up with a few more clients. And then you can look at seeing what is the most efficient thing to be able to touch on. Because like you said, if you're bringing someone in, it's essential to be able to maintain and ensure that there's nothing there in terms of, no problems with end of month contract
100%.
payments, all these things.
And I think like, my vision is that like the person I bring on board, I want to take really, really good care of them. And I thought about doing some, like potentially doing some kind of like profit share in the like minimal, but like some kind of incentivization to be like, this isn't just a salary you get, like it's kind of like filling that gap that I didn't have when I was employed, right? It's like some kind of scheme where it's like you earn as much as the value that you provide to the company, right? And then ultimately, as they go through, give them more responsibilities, kind of train them in everything. And then the idea is that like, great, now we're at like 30K, great. Now let's bring someone else on board. Then now the sort of like, they can train someone else, and then it should just become a domino effect, or we can just start to scale exponentially from there. That's the plan in my head. We'll see how it goes. You'll see everything on YouTube. So yeah, that's the plan. But we're sensible with it.
That's awesome. And I think like a really good note to end on, to be honest. We have covered a lot in this episode. It's been a real pleasure and like fantastic having you on. I've got 2 more questions for you before we end. So this is one I've not done before. I'm going to do this with every one of our guests. Do you have a question for our next guest? What would you like to ask them? They're going to be also an agency owner. And what would you like to find out?
Oh, that's a good question. Okay, is lead generation? Do you see lead generation? Presuming you only have lead generation people on, right?
Yes.
Okay. Do you see lead generation being like the end goal of your business journey, or is this just a stepping stone into something else? And if so, what is that something else? Okay,
awesome. So I'll get back to you with the answer as well. I'll clip it and I'll send it to you so you can see what they say. And the final thing is, it's fantastic having you on and just hearing about your intentions to what you want to do with Envio Studio going forwards. And thanks for joining me for your first podcast ever, which is a great achievement. I hope it's been good, and the Lead Gen Hustler Show experience has been nice. So before we end, I just want to understand just where can people find you? How can they follow your journey and hear more about your services? Where can we point them towards?
Sure. So main one is YouTube. So I think the first time we touched on this, but I'm documenting my entire journey. So the series is called Fight for Financial Freedom. So you can find that on YouTube. I actually don't know what my @ is. One sec. I think it's @Ben. Okay, so it's sorry, start that again.
No, all good. So where can the people find you?
It's @_Ben Hayward on YouTube. Twitter is I'm Ben Hayward, and then I don't use Twitter that much, but you can message me on there. LinkedIn as well. That's about it. But feel free to message on any of those platforms. If you have any questions, anything like that, happy to have a chat. So
awesome. And as we said, Ben is documenting his journey on YouTube transparently, like down to a T. It is super interesting. I've been watching the videos and I'm a fan. So I will add everything in the comments and description so you guys can check it out. Ben, it's been a pleasure, and thank you so much.
No, thank you very much.
Thanks.